Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is often referred to as a return to form for the series, a much more survival horror-driven experience than the action-heavy Resident Evil 6. I would actually go as far as to say that this is the scariest Resident Evil, and by a long shot. Resident Evil 1 through 3 focus on the zombie outbreak of Raccoon City, and play with a lot of fun zombie tropes, but it's a much more campy style of horror. The remakes do amp up the scares, but 7 seems to take influence from a much wider variety of horror films than the previous titles. When combined with the new-to-the-series first-person perspective, Biohazard is truly scary in ways the series has never been. From the major moments to the minute details, Resident Evil 7 is a love letter to the horror genre. In the opening moments of the game, Ethan Winters sets off into rural Louisiana in search of his missing wife, Mia. The game quickly throws Ethan into the creepy backwoods of the South, but he finds evidence that Mia has been here shockingly fast. Still, these moments as you approach the Baker residence are pretty tense, even though there's no actual combat. The setting really takes the reins here. It's dark, it's spooky, and of course there's tons of dead stuff everywhere to find, along with some questionable meat. Looks like signs of cannibalism, but we'll get back to that shortly. The opening moments where Ethan finds a creepy abandoned house after taking a wrong turn. There are probably a million horror films that have scenes such as this, but usually these protagonists end up in these kind of situations on accident. Ethan Winters is here for a reason. Gotta find Mia. When exploring the dark rooms of the guest house, Ethan finds a tape, and when he puts it on, the player shifts perspective to that of a cameraman. The first tape is like a found footage ghost story, kind of reminiscent of the Blair Witch Project. We play through the perspective of some ghost hunters who arrive at the Baker's residence in search of a story, only never to escape. Most of these tapes aren't required viewing, but they do help add a lot of context to the game. It's clear that something has been wrong with this place for a very long time now. But even this early in the game, you can see the developers' use of the new first-person perspective in making Resident Evil scarier than ever. I'm not gonna lie, the game loves jump scares, and I get it. With the first-person perspective, jump scares are more effective than ever, but they are spaced out well enough that it doesn't feel too overdone. Well, unlike the people on the tape, Ethan successfully navigates through the creepy house and even manages to find Mia in the basement, seemingly alive and doing well enough. Unfortunately for Ethan, he isn't able to make such a quick and painless escape. He rescues the girl, but something's clearly not right with her, as Mia violently attacks Ethan when they try to escape. Not before first creepy crawling towards Ethan like she's right out of The Grudge. And then when she attacks, I mean, it's really violently. Mia's face gets all contorted and freaky, and she brutally cuts off Ethan's hand with a freaking chainsaw. This scene is intense, no doubt about it, but again, we can see the horror influences shining through here. Mia seems directly influenced by The Evil Dead, specifically the 2013 film, sharing not only the name of a character from the movie, but even her appearance is very similar. Chainsaws come up again later in the game as well, and if you're familiar with The Evil Dead, I'm sure you know how popular chainsaws are in those movies. Ethan is able to put down Mia, which kind of renders this whole rescue mission thing pointless, huh? Well, new plan, just get the hell out of there. This, unfortunately, doesn't work. At all. Ethan's quickly knocked out by Jack Baker and falls right next to his wife. When Ethan wakes up, he's tied up in a dining room, just in time for dinner with the Baker family. His hand has been, put back on. Nice. But that's about the only nice thing going on here, as Ethan's being force-fed something real questionable. Maybe even those guys from the tape. Ethan is not eating though, and this pisses everyone off. This scene with a family full of crazy hillbilly cannibals, I mean, it's totally Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The only thing missing is Leatherface himself, but you know, Jack's pretty good with a chainsaw too. Marguerite runs off, pissed at Ethan, and Jack's about to stab Ethan in his face when the phone conveniently rings, and Jack and Lucas run off thinking it might be the damn cops again. Ethan escapes, really conveniently. Too conveniently. But as long as Granny keeps her mouth shut, he should be alright. This creepy old lady is also kind of reminiscent of the old grandpa character in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the twist with the granny here later on is pretty good. At this point, the game starts getting pretty heavy with its own Resident Evil tropes. Ethan explores a huge house that expands as you find access to new rooms, finding puzzles and keys to unlock new areas. Here, we are stalked by Jack. Do we want to say that this is inspired by Jack from The Shining? I mean, early on in the game when you're so defenseless, yeah, I kinda think so. He could be a little more subtle when he barges through the walls of the house, though. You don't quite get that "here's Johnny" moment, but close enough. Jack is perhaps the scariest of the family, at least the most outright intimidating. Through a few encounters with Jack, we learn that he has crazy regenerative properties, with Jack surviving his head being blown off and even being hacked to bits in this absolutely insane chainsaw duel. We eventually learn that the family wasn't always this crazy. Something changed them. Jack was once a seemingly decent guy, as was the rest of his family. Well, except for one, Lucas. This dude has been making shady saw traps for a while now. When Ethan encounters Lucas, it's not like Jack and Marguerite, where they stalk him as he makes his way through various puzzles leading up to a big boss fight. Instead, Lucas makes Ethan put down his weapons and enter his saw trap. Now, this isn't the first time that Lucas has run this trap, as there's a tape you can run through beforehand to give you some solutions for the traps. There are a couple Stephen King Easter eggs here, like this creepy clown writing "loser" into people's arms, perhaps a reference to the Loser Club that takes down Pennywise. The code you get for the door here being 1408 could also be referencing, well, Stephen King's 1408. The biggest and most obvious comparison, though, is clearly Saw and all of Jigsaw's freaky death traps. Then there's Evelyn, a creepy ghost girl who we only ever see at first just standing around being a spooky ghost. I think Evelyn takes a lot of inspiration from The Ring, creepy little girl with long dark hair. Actually thought she might have been a real ghost, based on her early encounters, but she's very much alive. Evelyn is tragic, she only wants to have a family. Why doesn't Ethan understand that? But I'll stop there, I don't want to give everything away. If you haven't played Resident Evil 7 yet, and you're a big fan of horror, you absolutely have to. The game really is a love letter to the horror films that it takes inspiration from, while still having a lot of those classic Resident Evil elements that make the series what it is. There's tricky puzzles, bioweapons, and awesome boss battles against giant mutated freaks. I do know that the ship section can be a little tiresome to get through, but think about why that is. The beginning hours of the game assault you with non-stop horror, tons of awesome references and new ideas. And then when you get to the ship section, you just kind of shoot some molds and get lost for a bit. That said, this section is home to some of the big reveals, where the story gets a lot more, Resident Evil feeling. But even with the slightly less exciting ship section, I really think this might be like maybe my second or third favorite in the series. It's hard to top Resident Evil 4, so Capcom stopped trying and instead made something entirely fresh feeling. And I absolutely love it for that. Let me know in the comments if I missed any other cool horror references, and hey, thanks for watching.